All right, welcome to episode 64 of the Gretsch Afternoon Drum Break. I am your host, Neil LaFortune, Gretsch Drum Artist, Gretsch Drum Lover, continuing my journey of talking to as many Gretsch Drum artists across the world. Today we have a fellow Canadian, a gentleman that I've known more as an acquaintance for several years and knew his name from being in the music scene in Toronto, and also rumors that he was a crazy lover of Gretsch drums like myself. So a man after my own heart. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Kevin Hulme. All right.
Thanks, Neil. Good, man. How are you doing?
I'm good.
What an intro.
There we go.
I've never heard anything like that. It's great. Thank you.
Well, it's true, though. I remember meeting you back at a drum shop in probably maybe the 90s, maybe later, maybe early 2000s, something like that, and talking with you. And I'm like, man, this guy knows his Gretsch stuff. He's a Gretsch fanatic, a Gretsch lover. And word on the street was that you were a heavy player. And I'm like, man, this is a guy that I gotta get. No, it's true. I gotta get to know and know of. But thank you so much for spending some time with us today. It's going to be awesome and talking about your journey, your musical journey, and your love of Gretsch drums. So welcome.
Yes, thank you, Neil. Thank you very much.
So where are you now?
Where am I now?
Yeah.
Well, obviously, this pandemic has changed everyone's course instantly. I was never a full-time guy. I've always had to have a side job, and during the pandemic, the business that I work for actually ramped up. So I was going crazy. 10-hour days. It was nuts. Probably not good for health-wise, but we'll get into that later. So then something happened after about halfway through the pandemic. I was in a minor car accident. On my way to work, I fell asleep at the wheel and hit a concrete pole. And I was okay, thankfully. Wrecked my car. They figured out the problem. It was nothing. I did all the scans, did everything at the hospital, and it was sleep apnea.
Oh boy.
So I have been suffering from sleep apnea for probably 30 plus years, because if you look closely, my nose is broken. My nose was broken in grade 7 playing football with friends outside, and it turns out I have a severely deviated septum and a broken nose that needs to be fixed. So what have I been doing? I've been recovering from the first 4 months of the accident, and then I all of a sudden just started having problems with my right hand, tingling in my right hand, severe pain in my neck. I would brush my teeth, Neil, and I'd have to stop and take a break. My arm would get physically tired. So there's an issue. Turns out I have a pinched nerve.
Yeah.
That I'm working on right now and seeing specialists and everything, and we're solve the problem hopefully sooner than later.
Man.
So now over those 6 months, even though I haven't been able to play as much as I'd like to, I've dove into the recording aspect of things and really started to explore. I bought an electronic set, a Roland. The TD-17,
wow,
unbelievable. Finally, they've come up with something as great as it is. Anyways, so I started diving into Superior Drummer 3 and working with my DAW and just learning about all that stuff to keep my mind and start getting into more creative type stuff. So that's what I've been up to. And I've also come up with a little business idea that will...
Okay.
I'm not ready to reveal yet, but it goes along the lines of what we do. So that's where I'm at.
That's great, though. Sometimes you've got to use the downtime and tough times to create inspiration and maybe spur you into another direction. And man, I hope that works out for you. That is phenomenal.
Oh, thank you.
I wanted to ask you, when did you start playing drums? What was the beginning like for you? How old were you when you started playing? What were the circumstances?
Well, I'll just briefly touch on growing up. My father was a musician. He was a guitar player, a drummer, and a bit of a singer. He had a family band with my uncles and everything. And sadly, coming back from a gig one night, or I think it was the next day, picking up the gear, they were in a car accident, and him and my uncle passed. He was 27 27 years old. My uncle was 40. My mother was 18, and there I am, 18 months old. So, Mom remarried, and he's been my father ever since. But I've always had my native side. My father was native Canadian, and my uncle played drums. So every time I go visit him in North Bay, he'd pull out his old Rogers, right? And that kind of started it. But it really took hold when I was about 12 or 13 when I discovered pop radio. Certain bands and certain things started to attract my attention, and the big band was Duran Duran. I was like, these guys. I wanted to be Simon. I wanted to be Nick. Well, no, I didn't really want to be Nick. I wanted to be John. I wanted to be Roger. Andy. Roger was actually the last one. So I actually bought a cheap Eddie Van Halen knockoff from the Sears Clearance Center, and I tried to learn to play guitar, and I just lost interest. I just had no. It felt really bizarre. Like I just couldn't do it. Then I wanted to be bass player, right? I wanted to be a bass player, and then of course I wanted to be Simon. And by this time, my parents are like, "Okay, this will pass." But then the drums thing started. I just started, going to my uncle's and started expressing interest in drums, and started playing at school. And my music teacher in grade 7 let me bang on. He had a Remo set or something, and I started banging on those. And my friends started getting into their bass, and we started jamming a little bit, right? On like Wipeout or. I think the biggest competition in grade 7 was me and this gentleman named Bruce Ing, who played drums, and everyone. Bruce Ing can play the fill for Alone, the song Heart. Heart Alone. There's a big drum fill, bra broom broom ba da da do, and if you could do that, so there was a competition because Bruce could do it, so I had to learn. And of course, back then when you're grade 7, that takes forever. So, that's how it all started. You know what I mean? I just met people that were really into it. And then high school started. And I walk into high school, and the set of drums is a Caribbean Blue USA Custom.
No way.
So this is my introduction to high school with the 1960 Superphonic snare drum. And the son of the music teacher, who was smart as a whip, and knew everything about everything, hated every music hated Rush that I was listening to, told me, "You got to listen to this, this, and this." I hated them. I loved them, and I learned so much about music and got introduced to so much at 19, 20, 21. During those years in my first band, in high school, I made a mistake there. During high school, those formative years, unbelievable what I was introduced to. And I mentioned it in my email I sent you, and I know it was very detailed, but I had to give you those details to fill you in. It's hard to just say, "Oh, I did this, this, and this," but there's a story behind it, right?
Absolutely.
So here I am, Rush was the only band that was it, right? When I got introduced to Rush, of course, love them. Yeah. That's a whole other conversation. But my friend's like, "You got to listen to this. Listen to the Police. Listen to Stuart Copeland. Peter Gabriel." I must have wore out. We bought everything was on VHS, so we were buying all the live concerts. And I grew up at the time, as you are, I think we're the same age, with videotapes. So I learned all my stuff off videotapes. I had everything. I had every instructional video out there.
Yeah.
And that's how it kind of got started. This gentleman introduced me to so much wide variety of music. So when I recorded my first record, every song I would pretend I was certain drummer. Like this song I'm going to be Neil. In this song it's going to be Simon influence, because I was listening to all that and absorbing all that. It was a lot, and I was fortunate enough to meet this guy and learn about all this crazy music. And I'm kicking myself because I probably should have paid attention a little more. But yeah,
you got a lot. There was good stuff to be hipped to. You know, we are a similar kind of an age, and it's uncanny how we have the Rush stuff, the Police stuff, the Duran stuff. You know, all the good stuff. And we did watch concert videos. I wore out that Exit Stage Left VHS.
Oh, yeah.
I wore it out. I think I have it, but I don't think it works anymore. And I do have a VCR, but I should try that. But that was our education, right? And all the instructional videos. I have them still on.
Oh, you do?
VHS. Yeah, of course I do.
I've moved so many times. I don't know where half of them are. But yeah, what was the one I wore out? The first videotape I bought was a Show of Hands, right? Remember seeing that for the first time? And then the second videotape I bought was Soul Cages Live with Vinny. And that was a whole other, like, that's just, you know.
I saw that tour in Toronto. That was cool. Seeing
you saw the tour, yeah?
I did, yeah.
Wow.
I saw Vinny play those Maple Customs because they were new. And I'm like, man, he's playing those drums, and he's, you know, he looks, you know, very Vinny-ish, and it was nuts. I just couldn't stop looking at him. Actually, they were all just ridiculously great. So David Sanchez and oh man, it was that's awesome. What about instruction? Did you do any lessons? Did you study with anybody?
Well, this gentleman, his name is Sean. He would show me things because he was very good with his hands, and he was very good at doing the concert band stuff, and I learned a lot watching him. I didn't really take formative lessons. I just watching the videos, and Modern Drummer was like my Bible.
Yeah.
You know, I everything, and I have thousands of them dating back to the 70s. Woo! You know. Yeah, I just when I moved to Toronto when I was 21, and I took lessons. I took a lesson off of Paul DeLong, maybe a couple. Went to his house for some tea. Paul was like a hero in Sudbury. We all knew him, and he would do clinics and stuff up there, and we'd always go see Paul, right? And you know, if you got to talk to Paul, it was, you know, and he was always awesome. You know, Paul. It's Paul DeLong, right? And so I had those kind of connections when I came down here. When I moved down, I had met Steve Kendry.
Oh, yeah.
We had opened up for the Spoons in North Bay, and Steve was a studio drummer, and I was all over him like, you know, fly on poop, because I wanted to know everything. And he was gracious and let me jam. You know, it was great. And gave me his phone number. And who else did I meet along the way was Dale Harrison. He was another big influence, because we played with the Headstones. And, you know, I'm this young 19-year-old kid, and, you know, these guys here, yeah, give me your number. If call me when you're in town. And Dale's been great. Dale's, you know, and got me my amazing dream gig, thanks to him. But yeah, it's just, and then so we see all these guys in Toronto, and like meeting you and meeting all these guys. I had this knowledge of drums, like I was a geek, you know, a drum geek. I knew everything about everything, and so I could have these conversations. And I think that's what built my relationships with a lot of the drummers in town, was my knowledge, I guess, and kind of knew what I was talking about. I'm not just trying to sell you a drum like some owners of drum stores would, but
right. Yeah. I
you know what I mean?
Understand that. That's a great education. That's more of a real world hands-on education, seeing people play and being immersed in that environment. is so key. And really, what spurred you to move to Toronto to kind of chase the dream, or just you needed to be in the scene a little deeper?
The first band I joined in Sudbury, we were called Animal Farm, and we got popular very quickly. Yes, we named it after the book, and the band got really popular quickly, and we started getting calls when a lot of the big bands. Sudbury was known to be kind of a stop on the way through, right, for Canadian tours. So everybody would stop in Sudbury, do a show. So we would get that phone call. And bands like Econoline Crush, The Tea Party, Biff Naked, Trooper, they all came through town. And then the big one came through, and we got that call, and it was I Mother Earth. I Mother Earth was getting huge at the time with their Dig album, and to me they were like the second best to Rush, right? Because they played all that madness with percussion and everything. And Edwin's voice was crazy. So what sparked it was we opened up for I Mother 3 times, and it was the seeing the tour bus come in, seeing the trucks come in, the unloading of the gear, like just watching it all, right? Because we sat in the bar, and our rehearsal spot was right underneath the stage. So we got to watch all the load-ins and everything, and it was seeing that. It's something I only imagined, right? When you imagine what it's like to tour and what you see in magazines, there was no social media back then, barely internet. So seeing that's what did it for me. That's like I wanted to do that. Like that's what it was that, and and bands move on and things happen, and it was a chance for me to make that move. And I had an aunt in Vaughan at the time, and I stayed there. I got a job at Just Drums right away, and that's where that started. And that's when I started meeting everybody.
Yeah, and that's the place that, as everybody knows, that's the place where drummers are going to go to the drum shops. You never know. Like, for example, if you were in New York City, back in the day, you would probably see, Papa Joe Jones. All of the cats that would eventually show up at Sam Ippolito's or whatever the drum shop. And that was, I remember seeing, it was kind of neat seeing Rick Gratton. Even though he taught there, it was really cool to see Rick, or to see Paul, or Steve Kendry, or Kevin McKenzie, or the dudes, right?
Randy Cook, yeah.
Randy would play, and he'd just sit down and play so great without warming up on a straight drum set. I was just when I grew up, and I always say this, when I grow up, I want to play like Randy Cook, so.
Well, I have a story about Randy, and Randy and I have quite a relationship. One day, I became friends with everybody and doing my thing. And I took a lesson off of Rick Gratton, and nervous Rick, I go in and I play my little thing, and I gave him my tape for him to listen to. And he says to me, he goes, you don't belong here. I'm going to get you out of here. I'm like, okay. We think anybody says that, as a compliment, right? You don't believe it, right? I didn't know the man that well. So that happened. And then Randy called me one day and said, just out of the blue, I guess he had my number. All he said was, what do you drive? I'm like, I just have a crappy car or whatever. He goes, I need someone to move some drums or something. I said, can you give me a day or two? He's like, okay. I went out and bought a $500 van. Wow. So I saw this. Randy's calling me to move some drums. So that started a relationship where I started moving all of doing Randy's cartage, which introduced me to Sean Brown, to Yamaha, got me into some of the shows, people who he was playing with at the time, the Sass Jordans, the Snow. I started, watching it. watching him, do the session stuff, and always very respectful about my position. And he never had to talk to me about it because I always read about that in Modern Drummer, right? You never, when you're on a, I get, what's the whole thing when you don't want to step on anyone's toes, right? You're not there to promote yourself. You're there to do a job. And that's how I always approached it with Randy. And it turned into a great relationship. I worked for him for many years and learned a ton. And I stopped for a long time. And then when I moved to California, we rehooked up, had some lunch. The relationship just continued. And I saw every studio in LA, basically. Worked with some unbelievable musicians, and and how did I get away from Randy with that? That's how it started. Yeah, that's how it all started. He called me one day and just asked me what I was driving, and I didn't have a van, but I bought one within 2 days, and that was one of 4.
Wow. It's true. There's no excuses. If you really want something, really want to do something, you'll make it happen. And if you don't, then you won't, right? That's
Exactly.
phenomenal. That's phenomenal. So what was your goal as a young drummer? I know you touched on this a minute ago, saying you saw these bands, you saw the trucks load in, you saw the bus, you wanted to be part of that. And it was also really cool of you to get that experience with a named player like Randy that was in that, and so that you could learn more, so that you're better, and that perhaps you could possibly get in and play, and hang with the cats and do those kinds of gigs yourself. So I commend you on that. It's very, very smart. As you know, this is a people business and relationship business, and it's you've got to do that. And when it's a time for your playing to do the talking, then of course that's going to happen. So let's talk about your playing journey so far. So
Okay.
When you were still in Sudbury, what kind of stuff were you playing? What kind of gigs were you doing there?
Well, I was in my working band, and we played. We're kind of new to writing, so we were playing a lot of covers and originals, and that's kind of what bands did up there. And all the people accepted that, right? Because that's how we presented our. There was a bar called the Townhouse, which was well known for independent bands, and where a lot of independent bands get their start, where people will accept all forms of music there without prejudice. And that's what was great about that bar. You walk in there and there was every kind. You know what I mean? There we had the goth people. And we were all friends.
Yeah.
We went through the grunge. We had our grunge guys, right? But everyone was cool. There was never any problems. And I love that bar for that. But so we were playing, a lot of the popular REM, we really concentrated on Canadian content. So we played Junk House. We played a lot of the Canadian stuff, more indie bands, and our own stuff. And that's what kind of a lot of people liked. And that's what I was playing, more rock oriented. I wasn't really playing with players that I was listening, like I was listening to the Stings, the Peter Gabriels, the Edie Brickell, and the New Bohemians, but I wasn't playing with those types of players. Those weren't available to me. Mine were rock pop type players. And when I moved to Toronto and got introduced to the Orbit Room, I was there every night because I got introduced to R&B, and I didn't know about old R&B. That's one thing I didn't touch on with my friend. We were more into the newer, you know what I mean, the stuff at the time, the 90s. So the Orbit Room was another education in itself. Yeah, I used to go watch Rick play every Wednesday night, and then that turned into Mike Slosky on Friday nights with the Dexters. That snare drum sound was something took me forever to get, but Mike and I became friends. We've lost touch, but we were friends a lot at the time. I just loved everything about his playing, his slickiness, his feel. You know what I mean? And you saw everybody there, right? Like everyone. You never know who was going to be there when you walked in. Richie Hayward, I saw play there, like through Rick and Maureen. Yeah, I got to meet Richie. He was awesome. It's like amazing.
So for those of you who are not from the Toronto area, the Orbit Room, is that closed now? Or did that open back up, or is it gone?
The original Orbit Room has closed due to the pandemic, but there was an online fundraiser that surpassed its goals, and I think they're going to be reopening. We're just not sure where yet.
Okay, so that was
Yeah.
partially owned by Alex Lifeson, and I'm not sure who else. What Alex?
His name was Tim Nodder.
Tim Nodder, that's right.
Yeah, Tim and Alex, from what I know, have been friends forever, and yeah, they went in on the bar together. And from what I saw in an interview, I guess Tim's the only owner now, and has been. It said in his little blurb, and he has been the owner for the last probably 10 years on his own.
Oh,
but that
okay.
place, yeah. But it's still, kind of a rush place, but it also had his own identity. Like I remember being young and asking Tim so many questions, and he was so awesome answering them all. The guy's trying to run a bar, but everyone's in there at first because they heard it's Alex's bar.
Sure.
But that place turned into an entity of its own. Just with the music, you've been there 100 times. Like it's just its own little cool little spot, right?
Played there once and saw Charlie Cooley subbing in for Paul DeLong in the first set, and watching Paul, and I'm standing in the hallway there beside where the washrooms were, and Charlie he goes, "Hey Neil, hey buddy, you shut the snare wires off." There was a snare drum that was sitting against the wall. He goes, "The wire, I can hear the snares driving me crazy." So It was cool watching Charlie up close, and then seeing Paul just go in there and just murder the gig. It was such a cool place.
So I don't know if you know this, but Paul was subbing out that first set to a bunch of us. He was doing The Lion King at the time. He was, and so I did a set once, and that was like my dream come true, playing at the Orbit Room in front of my peers, and in front, kind of proving to myself to Tim and all the other musicians. So I did that one set once too, and that was unbelievable. I practiced so hard. I remember it was great. But
so did you have a set list ahead of time? Did you know what you were playing?
Yes, I had the set. Yeah,
which is good.
Yes, yeah. And like I said, I think Paul invited everybody. Charlie Cooley. There was a bunch of other guys that did it while Paul can. Yeah, it was really cool having different guys in every week, right? So that was neat. Fun. Yeah.
And Russ Boswell was on bass, who, as you know, is a terrible, terrible bass player. A terrible guy. And
I know.
One of the finest. What a lovely, lovely man. I used to teach for his dad's music store in Brampton back in the late 80s at Quartet Music. And I'd see pictures. And Russ would come. He was on the Corey Hart gig, so he would come in, and I'm like, there he is. It was really cool just seeing this.
He did Corey Hart. Yeah, I remember that.
Oh yeah, it was good. The pictures. Oh, and anyway, that's neat. Yeah, what an amazing place. So getting back to the Orbit Room and the R&B thing, so you added that to your bag of knowledge after seeing those drummers playing that music.
I did, and at the time I was like most of us were working in different cover bands in the city, and one in particular, it was more of a dance type band, and we did a lot of this old R&B stuff. It was called the Groove Divas. And we had three female singers, and so I applied a lot of that. We did a lot of those old songs, up tempo and stuff like that. But I always listened to the original grooves to get all the shots and stuff like that, right?
I remember learning that music in my early 20s and not really liking it because I came from the Rush camp or the Chick Corea electric band. I was like, man, this stuff is so old and so lame, and the drums sound awful. What did I know, right? It was, stupid. But now, of course, I love that, and that's like the most amazing stuff to learn as a drummer. So it's a good education for sure.
And what do? We go out and buy old drums and tape them up to get that sound. Right? Isn't that funny?
Oh, it's funny. All right. I know. Anyway, so the Caribbean Blue Gretsch kit was your first taste of Gretsch drums. Is that would I be able to say that?
Yes. And on top of that, the person that the son of the music teacher owned a Gretsch set also. He had a 10-12. I know, it was like inevitable. He had a 10-12. I remember him, he brought it and he set it up on his Gibraltar rack, which was new at the time. Gibraltar curve rack, 10, 12, 13, 16, 22, with a 6.5 by 14 Noble and Cooley snare drum. So
were these people rich?
Yeah, both were teachers, and
They did okay.
Yeah, they did okay, and they got deal on musical gear, right? What was the name of the music store up there at the time? It was a big rental company too. I totally forget, but they had tons of Gretsch coming through.
Where was that?
So that's how. In Sudbury, it was called.
Oh, I don't know.
I can't remember. It was long gone by the time I came to school. So, anyways, Gretsch was like just thrown at me, and that was the drums to get. Completely unaffordable, right? To me, my first drum set was a Pearl Export kit, and nothing against that. That was, that thing was built like a rock, and I still use the hi-hat stand. I just retired it from playing. Like 30, I've had that thing since I was 16. Never went down.
Wow. They made stuff well then, they really did. Yeah. So what was your first impression of these Gretsch drums? What went through your mind when you saw and heard them?
I didn't like the 12-13 because we had pinstripes on them, and they were just for general purpose, right? But when my friend brought in his, he always had them tuned up just beautifully, right? And it just, I don't know how to explain it. It was, when you see an expensive car and you look at it and you sit in it and you're just like, you just accept that you're never gonna, it is what it is. That's how I felt about Gretsch drums. They just seemed very unattainable. You know what I mean, at the time. So I started looking at Pearl, really. You know what I mean? I was looking, but I didn't like the mounting system.
Me neither. Hated it. Still don't like it.
Through the drums. I even bought the when the rims mounts came out for the Pearl Exports. I tried everything. Position. I just couldn't do it. So I'm like, yeah.
And they were long. Those toms were long, and they'd hit the bass drum. I'm like, what is wrong with this? Like why didn't anybody? Right? They were like this.
I know.
Not good for little kids to learn on either, right? Like they were just dumb.
No. So after I got rid of those, I still couldn't afford a set of Gretsch, but I found something. I bought all my stuff from Just Drums in Toronto through Doug and Paul that owns Soul Drums. They were my guys. They were awesome. They put up with all my phone calls and ridiculous questions, and
Paul
love
here.
Those guys. Yeah. And Danny Brown cursing my name probably to this day.
Oh, Danny Brown. Yeah. Wow.
I bought a set of Canwoods, a white set of Canwoods that were owned by Ashwin Sit from Sarah McLaughlin's ex-husband. Yeah. So they were his kit. I had 8, 10, 12, 13, 16, 22. So that was the closest I could get to Gretsch because they had Keller shells. So I used those for a bunch of years until I moved to Toronto, and working at the music store, a set of Gretsch drums came in. Okay, so they were white, 10, 12, 14, 16, 20 by 18. And of course, they were a ridiculous amount of money. I was a salesman, so I sold them twice. And whatever reason, wife got mad. They ended up being returned.
Yes.
So at the time, I spoke to, so they got returned again, and I'm like, I started talking to the owner at the time, Dave Hamilton, and I said, "Listen, I want these. You know, I'd been working there a while, kind of proved myself. So we worked out a deal. Turns out he had something I wanted, which was I had an old marimba. I don't know how I acquired it. I had a wood marimba, not a full size, but a half size.
Perfect.
So he gave me a certain amount, sight unseen, for it, and I traded my Kenwoods. So between those two, and he gave me his discount, you know, I probably ended up owing him a couple $100 or whatever. But I got my kit. I got my Gretsch kit. So the first thing I did was put them on rims because they were still attached to the shell. I played them like that for a while, but of course I was into the rims mounts and stuff like that.
We all were. We all were.
And that drum set, which is,
yes,
there it is. That's it right there.
Oh no way!
Yeah,
I love what. That a wrap? Is that a wrap?
No, no, it's lacquer, and it needs to be redone. it's all cracking and everything. But that kit has been on every recording that I've done.
That is phenomenal.
Yeah,
what are the sizes again? Can you recap that for us?
10, 12, 14, and 16-inch floor tom. 14 by 12, 16 by 14,
Love it.
10 by 7, 12 by 9. Yeah, I think it's a 12 by 9. It's a little long for my liking, but it's okay.
All good.
And 20 by 18-inch bass drum. So it's a little cannon.
That would be amazing. What's different about that bass drum than a 20 by 16? I know it's 2 inches longer, but sonically, does it just have more low end, more oomph?
A little bit, depending on the tuning, and if you're going for that deeper sound. It wasn't working for me for a while, so I in California I actually found, if you can believe this, a 1980s 22 by 16 bass drum in white, but it's white wrap. You can't tell the difference. So that thing, it sounds beautiful. So I'm thinking of turning the 20 by 18 into a gong drum. Maybe. I don't know yet. Because I have a 20 already. So I don't know.
That would be interesting for sure.
I want to do a lot of weird things.
The things that we think about just before we're going to sleep. What if I turn that into a gong? Right? You know, just crazy stuff. That's a beautiful kit. I have a white Gretsch kit too, and love white. They look wonderful under lights on a stage. Of course, they are whatever the lights are color-wise shining on them, and use that for our ABBA Revisited shows a lot of times. And they love it because it can be pink, it can be blue, or it can be whatnot. They're amazing. And the sound of Gretsch drums, when you first heard them, what was it for you that just went, that is my sound?
It was I was told what to listen for, because I didn't know what I was listening for.
Wow.
You listen to the Rush stuff, and I grew up on that, you know, between the Hold Your Fire and Presto, where everything was really processed, and the drums, you know, you could hear, like Neil's toms were always very definitive and very clear and very beautiful. You can hear everything, right? So I didn't like them at first because of that warmth, but it took me a while. I had to improve my vocabulary to appreciate what I was listening to, if that makes sense.
Wow, I totally get that.
I was too busy focused on the Rush stuff, and I wanted that high punchy sound, and thought and my friend's like, you're this, you're that, don't be dumb, you want this. So he would, you know, almost borderline abusive, but I needed it to hear that, to get it through my head, because I was stubborn, right? When you're that young and you only think you're going to be this and that, and this is the way you're going to go, he forced me to do a lot of things that I was uncomfortable doing, because I didn't know what I was doing. And tuning was another whole thing that, you know what I mean? It's that warmth. It's that what is it about Gretsch drums? It's yeah, you know, at this age, we hear something, we know, we could tell almost that that's a set of Gretsch.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and I can tell if that's this or a DW or something like that. It's just it's not just about loving a drum. You have to really get into it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I'm,
When
and
you
I'm really sorry.
go ahead. No, go.
Oh, what I was going to say is I'm really curious about before I signed on with Paul, I was asking him a lot of questions about the new drums compared to the old ones, and what he told me was the old ones have that warmth and the newer ones have that newer sound, I guess, that little bit more of a definitive punchiness. Like anything new, right? You got to work it in to get that old sound. So what I really want to do with my older USA custom is have the have you ever thought about or ever have your bearing edges done?
By Paul Cooper.
Oh, okay, you did.
Yeah.
And
Just one tom. That's all. Yeah. Other than that, no.
did it bring out? I really want to bring that wood out, that tone. That's what I'm going for with the older set. I'm not going to touch the new set when I get my dream kit.
What is what era? Do you know what year your kit was made? If you check by serial numbers with the
81.
Oh,
Yeah,
do you
they're
have,
the
do you have this spill over on the silver sealer on the edge? Do you have that?
This
Or the stain? It's one of the two that Paul DeLong was talking about. He said the good ones have, the bearing edge. I think he said it was either the silver sealer or it was the stain, one of the two. And my mid 80s, 84, 85, my first ever Gretsch kit had that, and they sounded just stupid good. Just like make you cry good.
so the paint just drips it's on the bearing edge. I never really looked.
Right. Have a look on actually check. We'll double check with Paul because he mentioned this before, and it could just be a Paul experience thing. But I mean, he has super incredible discerning ears when it comes to Gretsch drums, and very well versed in the different eras of Gretsch drums. But to answer your question, no. So I would maybe even talk to Paul Cooper and seeing if they would do something. They would just refresh them. That's what he did with my 12 that I had, and it came alive when I got it back. He goes, it wasn't out much, it just came alive, and it was just great.
That's what I need. I need a refreshing. These things are how old, and I don't think they've ever been touched. And I have always had a little bit of problems with my 12 and 14, so I want to get them to sing. That's what I'm looking for. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
cool.
Those are great floor tom sizes too. I love those shallower depths. Those are really, and they look hip, and they sound great. Sometimes I find a 14-14 or a 16-16 sometimes to me sounds. I don't know. I just like the shallower depth. I like all Gretsch stuff. Okay, I've got a killer 16, couple of 16-16s here that I just hit and I like. There is no better floor tom sound than that. It's perfect for my
I know.
Anyway,
do you have any vintage kits?
I do. I have a 66 13 16 22 sky blue pearl, and
Wow.
and love that guy, and wonderful, sorry about that, wonderful sounding drum kit, and some old snare drums, some an 83 and a I guess a 92 snare drum USA, but nothing other than that that's old, except for
that's cool.
It's a cool drum kit, great sounding with the old hardware. Yeah. What about you? Do you have anything older than the 81s?
Yes, actually, I have a 1964 12, 13, 16 with matching snare drum 22 round badge kit.
And the color?
Blue sparkle.
Oh my! Come on.
Hold on, let me show you here. Hold on. If I could turn you around.
We need a drum roll.
Oh, did I turn you off? Oh. How does it turn around? Hold on. I got to turn the light on.
I
Sorry.
actually just. There we go.
There we go. Hold on.
Yeah.
It's kind of
A blue sparkle. Where did you find the? Oh my goodness.
it's kind
Where
of
did you
hidden in
find
there.
those?
There it is. So, this is a story for you. And this is a story, and I'm so happy to share this because everybody needs to have one of these stories. So, I was living in Los Angeles. I was probably about a year in, and there's this website that was kind of like a Craigslist, like a Kijiji up here, and it
Yep.
was new down there. And so I started scrolling through it just to see, because I was bored. And I saw a picture of a round badge, but it was just a picture of the Tom, orange sparkle. It was an orange sparkle round badge
Wow.
Tom, and I just kind of read it briefly, and it said $150. So I just ignored it. That's about right, I thought. It's $150 for a Tom. I wasn't looking for a Tom at the time. That's cool. I ignored it. And I went back about 3 or 4 days later, and I didn't realize that I could scroll more and read more. I just thought it was just a quick. So I scroll down, and it says full drum set for $150.
Come on.
Exactly what I said.
Stolen.
Hold on, gets better. So I said I'm gonna go check this out. I contact the guy. I brought my neighbor, just in case I was gonna get robbed or something, right? I brought my neighbor, and I roll up to this guy who's a junk collector. He opens up his garage. He's got a garage full of junk. He starts sifting through. He starts pulling out these old cases. So it didn't look like it was stolen. There was nothing. He starts pulling. They're random from everywhere, and he pulls out a full drum set and a trap case, one of the old stand-up ones. So he pulls this all out, and I'm like, so I said, $150. Yeah. I didn't even look to see what was inside because it was full.
Nope.
I just handed him the money. We loaded everything up. I thanked him. I went on my way. I was blown away. I get home. I open everything up, and it's 12, 13, 16. Sorry, 13, 16, 22-inch bass drum. Somebody had drilled a Tama mount in the bass drum and ruined it. Big hole. It came with a Rogers power tone snare drum, 1970s or 60s. A couple of vintage Zildjians, like not K's, of course, just A's, 70s. Some old brushes and a cowbell. So the toms on this kit sounded amazing, but the bass drum had that big hole. So I tried to sell them. I wasn't really getting what I wanted, but there was a store in Studio City that sold vintage drums, mainly Gretsch, and I was always in there. And he never had a blue sparkle kit, and so I would check periodically. And this was coming to the end of my time in California, and I rolled in there one day, and I look up, everything was always up high, and there it was. Blue sparkle kit, 12, 13, 16, 22. And I'm like, I don't care if it's original. I don't care anything. You have it. So I worked out a deal. I traded him my current, that kit, that round badge kit, orange sparkle. I gave him a couple of old snare drums that I wasn't using, Ludwig Acrolite, and a Superphonic that somebody gave me. And I had some extra cymbals. So it was hardware for hardware. And I walked away with my dream set. He probably got the better end of the deal, but I didn't care because I got exactly what I wanted. And I came home with a 60s round badge kit. And I used it on a bunch. I think I sent you some pictures. That was my gigging kit for the first while I got back.
That's cool, right?
Yeah. Oh, and I have what else do I have? When I was on my way to New York, I picked up a 1959 Renown snare drum in white marine pearl, the same marine pearl as yours.
That's
I picked that up at Guitar Center, at a Guitar Center.
That's crazy. Nothing like hunting and finding. Man, I was so into that years ago when eBay was new. I did so much eBay business and buy and sell, and then man, oh man, I was just. And I still love vintage drums. I really do. There's something about them, right? It's the, I don't know if it's, the hunt that we really like, or just finding that magic sound. I love old drums. I really do, and sounds like you do as well. So you've got the white kit, the blue sparkle kit, some snare drums. That's incredible. So it sounds like you're all set. Do you have anything else?
I do.
I kind of thought you might.
I go through. Yeah, I have a set. My gigging kit is the Catalina Special Edition Birch.
Oh, sweet.
They are right here. That's them. In that, I'm a big fan of blue. So
I see.
I'll tell you a story about why I like the Birch and why I chose the Birch. I worked at Long and McQuaid briefly for about a year, and that's when they first released the original Birch drums.
Okay.
If you remember, back probably 15 years ago. And they sounded amazing. And obviously I was a Gretsch guy and I loved them. So my big thing was we had a set of DWs. And so I would tune up a set of DWs and a Birch set of Gretsch identically. And I'd have customers come in. And if they were looking for a kit, I'd do the comparison. And they were blown away. I sold so many of those Birch kits, but I never bought one for myself. So when they came out with the newer version and that color, I'm like, I got to get a set because everything was better. The hardware was better. I know they're not broadcasters or whatever, but they work perfectly for pub situations, and they sound great. You put mics on them, you'll never know the difference, right?
No,
you know what I mean. It's all the tuning. Yeah,
the tuning and the touch, and it's in here as well. That's cool. Man, that's what I love about Gretsch lines is that literally I sold everything. I have a snare drum that I bought from Don George, Neil Peart's first drum teacher, that I bought from Don that he had since '76, a Pearl snare drum. And I bought that because I loved Don. We were good friends and close, and it was a great honor for me to hang and know him. But everything else I have here, apart from a 20s duplex drum, but they're all Gretsch snare drums, and they cover everything that I need. So as soon as I signed on as an artist, I'm like, I'm getting rid of my Supra. I'm getting rid of my Slingerland snare drums. I just didn't need it because we have everything from all the lines, from the beginner lines to the crazy, beautiful USA stuff.
Now, I have a bit of an issue with getting rid of gear.
I see.
Well, Let me show you there's my snare drum. That's part of my snare drum collection. There's another 2 rows.
Crazy.
I found I've always been into the different sounds, and one of the things about being introduced to all that music when I was younger was, what equipment are they using? Yeah. You know what I mean? I fell in love when I was working with Randy. He would trust me to recommend what snares to use on his sessions, and 90% of the time that's what he used. And I always found myself going for that good old 70s Black Beauty that he had.
Right.
It was tuned low. He never liked his drums tuned high. That was different. I'm a little bit different. I like kind of a little bit more of the crack. But I started. But I always loved his Black Beauty. So when I was able to afford one, I started doing every comparison I could find on YouTube during this time off I've had.
Yep.
Comparing the old to the new, comparing the Gretsch, comparing everything, trying to find. I ended up buying a Black Beauty, like a B stock, and it's beautiful. It's wonderful. So I like different sounds. I always said to myself when I saw that the one videos when they were showing
yeah.
I'm like, if I ever won the lottery, I would walk into Drumland and say, I want you to order me every single one of Gretsch's snare drums.
The one.
Yeah.
That is wonderful. We have about 5 minutes to go.
Okay.
Could we just chat a little bit about how you became a Gretsch artist, how long you've been a Gretsch artist?
Sure. When I moved back from California, I saw a post by Paul DeLong that he was now a part of the Gretsch family, which I'm like, okay, that's of course. So
Right.
just for fun, I emailed him because I did have a relationship with B&J Music. Do you remember Wally Bianowski?
I know Wally well. Sure do.
So yeah, so I had a bit of a relationship with him for Gretsch stuff, but not really. And then he retired. I moved away, and everything just kind of went its separate ways. So I emailed Paul and said, Paul, who's the guy now? And when he told me who it was, I was blown away. It was Dave McAllister, who I knew from Sabian. I've been a under the radar Sabian artist for 23 years now.
Wow.
And so I knew Dave from shaking hands, and I would attend every show, support all the, what was it called here again?
Miak?
Miak, yeah. Go to the Miak shows when they had, and I've been to a couple of the NAMM shows and stuff like that. So I just sent him a nice little email, and I sent him about a half a dozen pictures of me playing on my various Gretsch kits over the year, and just said I would love to be an official. I love the kit. I love everything about it, and that's how it started. And it's been about 3 years now, and unfortunately, COVID hit. I was hoping we'd have like a Gretsch event with all the artists, because there's been a lot of guys that have jumped on, which is great. Charlie Cooley. I found out that you're on. I'm on. Anthony Michelli.
Jason Pierce.
Anthony Michelli, freaking unbelievable jazz drummer.
Oh,
so
love Anthony.
You know what I mean? I want to sit down and have lunch with all you guys.
Yeah. We will
what I mean?
definitely do that. I have a feeling it'll be next year that we'll be able to do that. But amazing. So, man, I didn't realize that you were an artist up until a few months ago when we began chatting. But, man, so good to just kind of encapsulate a little teeny bit of the experience of that you've had over the last few decades, man. And I tell you, really nice to see you as in person.
Thank you.
As right now. And, man, I'm really glad to have our friendship, and man, it'll be amazing when we can all get together and do a Gretsch hang,
Yes.
And I want to thank Dave McAllister and Andy DeCoulis at B&J. They were my A&R people when I was a Canadian artist, and still chat with those guys. So it's phenomenal. What a great family, what a great Gretsch family. It really is. And thanks to Fred and Dinah and Andrew Shreve and everyone. And I want to thank you for your time, man, spending this. So we're pre-recording this here on a rainy evening in, Southern Ontario. And I wish you all the best for the rest of 2021. Man, it's coming to a close in a hurry. And let's hope that we all get out playing and it's all safe and good again. And everyone, stay tuned for episode 65 next time. Everybody take care.
Thanks, Neil.